This is one of the events that sends a chill down my spine every time I talk about it. It was during the pandemic, after the COVID restrictions were lifted. As you already know how hard it was for everyone to work because of the restrictions. When we were able to open again, I was knee deep in meetings with clients and work. I'm in the fashion industry and own a talent management firm. We had hired new interns because there was a lot of work to do. I am the president of the company, so I don't really have to interact with the interns. I had only greeted them once on their first day, and we were all wearing masks, so it was hard to remember their faces. It was a busy day, like usual, and I had a meeting with a client. I took my car and went for lunch with them. When I returned, I found a white Cadillac standing in my space. Now, I don't know about most places, but we have always allotted everyone their own space. This was decided according to everyone's requirements and ease of access. We manage models, photographers, and makeup artists, so we generally have to take them to different locations. Our company cars and clients are usually given the best spots. Anyway, I see the Cadillac and I have no option but to park in one of the client spots. I guess that it was by mistake. Some newbie must have been confused or unaware of the rules. I tell my assistant to remind the interns about the parking rules. Around 4 p.m., I had another quick meeting outside. When I returned, I found my spot free. I thought maybe my assistant had already informed everyone and that's why they removed their car. Anyway, I carefully reversed my car to park and suddenly something hit me. For a second, my mind was completely frozen. My hands trembled and my head spun. I had no idea what happened, but it almost felt like an earthquake. I slowly lifted my head and looked outside through my windshield. There was steam rising up from the hood of my car, and behind it was a white Cadillac. Of course, anyone's first instinct would be to check if they are okay and if the person is okay too. I opened the door and rushed towards the car. A woman in her early 20s stepped out and looked at her bumper. She had the most Karen-y hairstyle ever, but she was really young. The rest of the conversation was unbelievable. EW, entitled woman. I asked EW if she was okay, and the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "Look at what you did to my car!" I stood, baffled. Anyone could see that my car was in a way worse condition than hers. I was still considerate and asked her if she was in any kind of pain, but she point blank ignored me and asked if I was blind. Her thoughtless behavior enraged me, and I asked her if she could see what she did to my car. "I'm going to do even worse. You're going to pay for this. I will get you begging on the streets." At this point, I knew this was going to be a bad route. She roared, "It's your fault! Why were you parking your car in my parking space?" I asked her why she thought it was her space, to which she replied that it's because she had been parking her car there for the last week. Now, I was on an overseas business trip for a week. I hadn't been in the city for about 8 days. So, I guess she saw an empty space and claimed that it was hers. I calmly told her that it was a mistake and that it was my parking space. Then I asked her that if she was so confident about herself, she should show me the number she was allotted. She turned as red as a tomato and gave me the infamous holier-than-thou look. I was annoyed because I had a lot of work to do. I shouldn't be out here arguing with someone so young about a parking space. I just told her to move her car and decided that I would discuss it later. However, we already know it was never going to be this easy. She screamed, "I have never even seen you in the office. Who the hell are you even? I would probably eat you up for breakfast. You ruined my new car, you witch. Now pay up." My patience level was running out. I told her that she was insane and that I was about to call the cops on her. I knew she wouldn't apologize at all, so I dialed the number on my phone. As soon as I heard the first ring, there was a loud bang that followed. My phone slipped from my hands. I was literally shaking. I could hear, "Hello? Hello?" from the other side of the phone. I couldn't say anything. My mouth was parched. When I looked up, I found the hood of my car barely hanging on. It didn't look like it could be fixed. The Cadillac had crushed my car twice, and the woman sitting inside it was smiling like a lunatic. I was baffled beyond understanding. Her car was damaged too, but she drove away without saying anything at all. I didn't understand how the situation escalated so quickly. It wasn't something that she should have gotten so angry over. I was even ready to forgive her. For the first few minutes, I sat on the floor shivering. I called my assistant immediately and told her to share information about all the newly hired interns. It was beyond my imagination when I finally went through the EW's resume. I realized she was the daughter of one of our major business partners. I had heard about her being a stubborn child, but I would never have imagined in my wildest dreams for her to intentionally do something so dreadful. I understood that she probably thought she'd get away with it. After all, she didn't know who I was, and she just thought I was someone random. If something happened, she'd probably ask her father to pay for it, and she would have to bear no consequences. However, I wasn't going to let it be so easy. I had already made up my mind that I will drag her to court, but before that, I would properly embarrass her. I asked my assistant to inform all the interns to build a simple presentation based on what they had been working on for a week and present it on Friday morning, 2 days later. Meanwhile, I got the footage from the CCTV and planned to hand it over to the cops. I also made a copy for myself and planned my revenge. The next day, my assistant informed me that she harassed the driver and asked him to let her use the company car. I was dumbfounded. There wasn't a boundary she wasn't willing to cross. The driver thought she was joking at first, but then she demanded that she should be allowed to use the car since her car was wrecked by a client or some lowly worker in the company. When the driver told her that it was only used by the talents, she cursed him and told him that she would get her fired. I asked my assistant to tell her that it would not be tolerated any further if she kept on causing such ruckus. Of course, I wanted her to cause more issues because she was really digging her own grave. On Friday, I asked my assistant to seat everyone in the meeting hall. I had called my business partners for a meeting and asked them if it would be okay for them to attend a short presentation done by the new interns after the meeting. I told them that it would be good for their morale and confidence boost. Most of the people agreed to attend while others were busy, so they said their goodbyes after the meeting. Just a reminder that most of my partners are really good friends of mine, and I have known them for years. So it wasn't unusual for me to ask them for something like this. We did this for each other sometimes. I asked the assistant to call every newbie one by one. I asked EW for their first presentation because I really didn't have time to go through the entire act. So, EW arrives and doesn't recognize me at all because I was wearing a mask. I asked my assistant to help her with the slides. Her face turned pale as soon as she spotted her father. I introduced her as the daughter of my business partner. Her father was visibly surprised and looked excited, maybe because he had high hopes for her. Though for the next few minutes, she was struggling to explain anything or answer any questions. I signaled my assistant to go according to our plans. The CCTV video of her crashing my car twice played suddenly on the screen. EW looked horrified. She kept mumbling, "It's not my fault, Dad," and crying. Her father looked lost and asked her what the hell she was doing. But this wasn't enough for her to humble. Rather than apologizing for her behavior, she turned towards me and asked me angrily as to why I was embarrassing her knowingly in front of her father. I finally decided to take off my mask. As soon as she saw me, blood drained from her face. I told her that I was the president of the company. I also told her father how she wanted to use the company cars for herself and she harassed the driver because of it. She looked at her father pleadingly, but her father turned his face away and apologized to me. I had known her father for quite some time, and I had helped his company during a critical time. He too knew that I wasn't an unreasonable person. I thought it would be over and I can finally have some peace, but she started screaming and throwing things here and there. We called the bodyguard to hold her and she told us that she will take me to court and make sure my company is destroyed. My assistant, like the clever woman she is, recorded everything and told her that her behavior was abusive. For the next few minutes, everything was haphazard. I fired EW from the company immediately. Her father offered to pay for the repairing charges, which he had to anyway. My assistant called the cops and they took EW with them. EW kept resisting and cursed me and spat on my clothes as they were taking her. I never imagined I had to deal with someone like her. I saw her a few more times in the court and every time I went, I realized she truly belonged there. She even claimed that I used to harass her in the office, but thankfully I had all the evidence and my subordinates to support. Last I heard, after she was released from prison, her father sent her to Greece to her grandparents. It was truly a relief. I used to live in a small house on a small block with very narrow front lawns, with neighbors very close by. The family over the road had 2 parents and 5 boys from about 18 down to 7. They were loud, obnoxious, and their way was right, always doing burnouts, revving their crap 4-cylinder cars with straight pipes, etc. They had a dozen cats that would be out all night and pissing on everything, killing birds and other wildlife. I turned the hose on 2 cats I saw in my garden. The mom saw it and wasn't the least bit happy. I just waved at her. They would occasionally send the youngest over to try to talk to me about Jesus, and he would tell me I am going to hell for my sins. Anyway, Mom had a car, Dad had a car, and the 2 eldest had a car each, and there was a project car. Nowhere near enough space for these cars, so they would park 1 or 2 up the road at a park and walk down. One day, one son decided to park on my front lawn. No biggie. 1 or 2 days won't matter. I'm pretty accommodating. A few days later, it was still there. I saw the dad and I said I needed the car moved. It was moved and I mowed the lawn. It was a very nice lawn, green, thick, healthy. One of the better ones in my street. That afternoon, the car was back on my freshly mowed lawn. This isn't going to resolve itself. I saw them again the next day and said they can't keep parking on my lawn. They have their own space or keep parking up the street. You've only got 1 car. We have 5 cars. We need the space. Yep. Well, the park is 1 minute walk away. Keep parking there. The car was parked back on my lawn again. I saw the dad, never saw the son, and said he needs to move the car. I'm doing some gardening and don't want to damage it, and don't want it in my way. It will be alright, he told me. Like crap it will. So I got out the bags of blood and bone and threw out heaps of it. It stank. In the garden, on the lawns, some got in the car, whatever. Dad said it would be fine. It freaking stunk. Being a petty individual at times, this being one of them, I got a bottle of fart spray called Liquid Butt out of the house. I opened the lid and poured a little along the base of the windscreen, where the aircon intake is. Then a little more. I had a chuckle and put the sprinkles on and went inside. About 30 minutes later, my son gets in his car to go out. I hear him go, "Aw, what the freak?" and he slammed his car door and drove off. The son never said anything to me, but the dad was pretty upset. He told me about how the car stank for whatever it was I did to my garden, and the son was pissed because some girl he liked wouldn't get in the car with him. I just said, "It's okay, it'll be alright." He stopped parking there after that. We are currently getting wooden poles to go into our front lawn to stop people parking on it. Our plan is to eventually make it a succulent garden with rocks as well, but it's impossible to keep anything alive as it's an every weekday occurrence. We have a nursery school diagonally across from us, and the parents won't stop parking on our section as they shout back, "It's just 5 minutes, it's not going to kill you." We have talked to the school about the issue and nothing has happened. I used to live in a house with a very steep driveway and a gate right in the street. Most people needed a run up to get their cars up the driveway, and I had to stop in the street to open the gate. A neighbor parked his car in front of my house, right next to the gate. His car was in the way of the people needing a run up and where I stopped to open my gate. I would have to stop in front of their house or next to him in the middle of the road to open the gate. I asked him not to park there, but he didn't listen. The first time I had to mow the lawn with his car in front of my house, I asked him to move. The second time, I mowed. I didn't ask him to move, and he never parked there again. 24 female. At the time of this story, I was about 9 years old. I had an across-the-street neighbor that was around my age. We lived in military housing, and the parents regularly made the kids get together to keep friends because we moved around so much. Anyway, I was invited to a Barbie sleepover birthday party with 2 other girls. Sorry to mention race, but it's prevalent in the story, but I am mixed and the other girls were white. The day before the party, we picked out a Skip It to gift to the birthday girl. The day of the party, my mom got me packed for the sleepover and sent me across the street. The party itself went great. We had cake and danced to music. The birthday girl opened her gifts and loved the one I got her. Then we started to get settled in to watch a movie. That's when things took a turn. I noticed the other girls laughing at me and whispering to each other. Then the birthday girl finally said, "Actually, Your mom said you can't stay the night because you are dirty and need to go home and take a bath. Those words have stuck with me to this day. I was confused, but I believed her when I was 9, and it was her party, so I grabbed my things and walked back to my house. Naturally, my mom questioned me when I got home, and I told her what the birthday girl said. My mom was not happy when we walked back over and informed the parents, and I took back the birthday present. My mom told me it was mine now. Me being a savage 9-year-old played outside with my brand new Skip It while the birthday girl watched me from her upstairs window. Edit to clear out some confusion. The birthday girl told me I had to go home. Her parents were not in the room. I got my things and went back to my house. Her parents didn't even know I had left. My parents didn't involve me in the conversation with her parents when I was 9. Please, this isn't a racial debate in the comments. Kids are mean to kids because they're different. Not only did she make a mean comment to me, I was able to leave their house without the parents realizing. Bullying issue, safety issue. Oh, I so want to hug small you. When my parents moved us from Ontario to the small community Dad grew up in, Mom found a woman to babysit my brother and I after school. The very first day, the woman put a board across the door that led from the mudroom to her kitchen and told us dirty children weren't allowed in her house. My brother and I were forced to stand in the mudroom for hours with no place to sit while watching her play games with her kids at the table and give them snacks. We were poor, but my parents kept us very clean. Our clothes may have come from secondhand stores and hand-me-downs, but they were tidy, and so we were hurt and confused. I was 4 and my brother was 6, so this went on for 3 days until Tiny Me got pissed and told my dad what was happening when he picked us up on the 3rd day. I still remember the hurt and humiliation in his face when I told him what the woman had said. Brother and I never went back, but I was told later that my dad did just to rip her a new one. Haha. This was almost 50 years ago, and I remember those words and the hurt and confusion they caused to this day. I am so very sorry it happened to you. I went to the house of a friend of mine before school one day, and my hair was wet because I'd washed it that morning. She said letting people see me with my hair wet was tacky. I've literally never forgotten it. Lol, people suck.